Let me first welcome Alexander Grigorievich once again. Thank you. Thank him for accepting the invitation. They came on such a day, as we agreed, to meet every year.
We wanted to ask you about the third round of negotiations that took place in Istanbul. You did not comment on them. We wanted to clarify whether a response was received from Kyiv regarding the proposal that was voiced in Istanbul. The proposal about 3 groups that could operate online. How do you generally assess the progress of the negotiations and the prospects? And one more thing. Recently, literally the other day, Zelensky said, I think even today, that there is no point in negotiating with Russia now, and we must wait until the regime in Russia changes.
Well, in principle, we can wait for their response. If the Ukrainian leadership believes that now is not the time, and we need to wait, then welcome. We are ready to wait. That's the first thing. Secondly, our political regime is based on the Constitution of the Russian Federation. And the government is formed strictly in accordance with the basic law of the state, which cannot be said about Ukraine. Now I do not want to go into details, but today's government in Ukraine is not based on the Ukrainian constitution. The constitution is clearly violated, but I do not want to go into these details. As for negotiations, negotiations are always in demand, and they are always important, especially if it is a desire for peace. I evaluate the negotiations positively on the whole. Well, how can one not positively evaluate the fact that hundreds of people returned to their homeland? This is positive. For humanitarian reasons, as you know, we handed over thousands of bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers. In response, we received several dozen of our guys who laid down their lives for the motherland. Isn't this positive? Of course, this is a positive moment. As for any disappointments on the part of anyone, all disappointments arise from excessive expectations. This is a well-known general rule. But in order to approach the issue peacefully, we need to have detailed conversations, and not in public. But this needs to be done calmly, in the silence of the negotiation process. And it is for this purpose that we propose creating the 3 groups you mentioned. In general, the reaction of the Ukrainian side was positive. We agreed that we can conduct such negotiations without video cameras and without any political noise, in a calm manner, and look for compromises. They have not yet started working. This work has not yet begun, but in general, I repeat, as it seemed to us, the first reaction of the Ukrainian side was positive. Therefore, we expect that this process will be launched.
Another additional question. Are the conditions for a long-term ceasefire that you voiced a year ago still in force?
Yes. These conditions have certainly remained the same. These are not even conditions, but our goals. I formulated Russia's goals. Until now, up until that moment, we were told that it was unclear what Russia wanted. That is why we formulated our goals in June last year at a meeting with the leadership of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. Everything is clear there, but the main thing is to eradicate the causes that gave rise to this crisis. This is the main thing. Well, of course, humanitarian issues are important. Security issues, in a broad sense. Issues of security of Russia, but also of Ukraine. By the way, the Ukrainian delegation expressed the idea that, perhaps, it makes sense to talk about the security of both Russia and Ukraine in the context of pan-European security. This was expressed by one of the leaders of the Ukrainian delegation. And in general, we believe that this is correct. We support it. And the humanitarian issue is the Russian language. It is independence and decent conditions for the development of the Orthodox Church, the Christian Church in Ukraine. All this together should be discussed and should be the basis for a long-term, lasting, without any time limits, peace.
Dear Alexander Grigorievich, Vladimir Vladimirovich cannot help but ask about the burning issue of the day. The West is constantly issuing sanctions. The European Union is literally churning out package after package. We have already counted the 18th package. In this regard, will the strategy of our union state with Belarus change in any way? Will we somehow react and change our anti-sanction strategy that we had before?
We have already changed everything that we needed to. If someone closed the door in front of us, then there are many open doors in the world. Both Russia and Belarus have made a very serious turn today. I think time will pass, and the whole world will appreciate what we have done. It was simply impossible to imagine at the beginning of 2020, but nevertheless, we did it. We turned the situation around. We live and will live. In this world, no one will be able to bring us to our knees. We are determined to defend our interests. Well, listen. Russia is a treasure trove of minerals and technology. Therefore, time is needed to finally prove to our doubters and others that we are capable of much. And yesterday you heard, at a meeting with diplomats, I said that there are no sanctions. They do not exist. That's all. And there is nothing to talk about them. As soon as we start talking about sanctions, then everyone who does not want to work refers to the fact that everything is complicated and difficult. There are no sanctions. That's all. Sanctions are opportunities. Therefore, I think that Russia is acting, understanding this issue even more acutely. We have always been and will be close. This was also said yesterday. Do not worry about these sanctions. What you asked Vladimir Vladimirovich about the negotiations and his position, in this case, I absolutely support him. This is very correct. The president says that war is war, but negotiations are always underway. The Americans fought in Vietnam very far from their land, and from the first day of the war they negotiated. The Ukrainians are mistaken. I am observing this, that they demand the impossible. What they say and what Russia offers. The president just voiced this. This is decided at the negotiating table. There may be compromises, retreats, turns, reversals, but to act so head-on, you said it right. It is a game for the public. This is because they talk a lot, but they do not want to do anything. That is why I publicly spoke about the statements of our mutual friend, for whom we were very worried, Donald Trump. I remember our worries, that he would win the elections, and so on. His ultimatums of 50, 60, 10 days, that's not how politics is done. If he wants peace, then he must get involved carefully, thoroughly. This is a military conflict, and he won't be able to give orders, especially to a nuclear power. Listen, well, this is just laughable. I told Vladimir Vladimirovich, I recently met with the Americans. I told them openly, his close friends, that you tell the president that he needs to do all this carefully, and then we can come to an agreement. Today, there is another air truce. I say that Russia is interested in this, and President Putin too. But you don't want this. Tell Zelensky, let him go for it, so that there are no such flying machines, and so that they don't fall on people's heads. There was already the last case, when a Ukrainian drone flew into Belarus with 59 kilograms of explosives stuffed with balls, and so on. Well, okay, it didn't explode. It hit a 10-story building, where ordinary, simple people lived. Therefore, this is a dangerous escalation. They need to stop this, and they need to do it carefully. The fact that the Russians are negotiating in Istanbul with the Ukrainians. Vladimir Vladimirovich called me. You remember. He thanked me. The continuation is happening in Belarus. We are doing everything. Exchanges at the border. The Ukrainians opened a section of the border. They restored the railway service there. That is, there is progress. They shouted a lot about children. Please, the Russians say, come, look. Negotiations are underway with the Human Rights Commissioner of Russia, Ukraine. Negotiations are underway on children. What bad did Russia do? There is a war going on. The children are left homeless. Russia fed and clothed them. No. They were accused of it. For what? Please, let's negotiate. And the exchange is underway. It turned out that there are not that many children. There are not that many children. Of course, 3 or 4 children were exchanged. Those whose parents lost these children. Please, when we said during the negotiation process in Istanbul, please, give us the lists. But there is nothing. There are no lists. Therefore, there is public escalation. This is not good. We just need to sit down at the table and negotiate, no matter what the positions are. And the negotiations, by the way, began in Belarus. Yes, 3 rounds of negotiations have taken place. Well, if you don't like it in Belarus, well, fine. Vladimir Vladimirovich and I discussed it. Negotiate, even on the moon, anywhere. But we need to sit down at the negotiating table and talk, not throw stones at each other. Zelensky says, I want to meet with Putin. Well, why are you shouting about it? First, prepare the appropriate ground, a statement, and so on. I told the Americans about this. Prepare it, and then sit down and sign. And invite Trump, Macron, anyone. Starmer. But first we need to prepare everything. Don't they understand this? They understand. And if they say so, it means they don't want to. They don't want to. And they are just playing to the public.
If you allow, one more question. You said that there is always an extensive agenda between our countries and you will discuss it. Will you discuss security issues? And, in particular, is there any clarity on the Oreshnik missile? Both sides confirmed that the Oreshnik missile will be deployed in Belarus, but maybe there are some specifics already?
The specifics are that the military, although they are specific people, and they are in a hurry everywhere, they wanted to deploy these Oreshnik missiles in Belarus approximately next year. Vladimir Vladimirovich said it right. This year we should basically finish these construction processes, creating infrastructure, and so on. We are not retreating from this yet. No, we are not retreating. The first thing I want to say in this regard, we have produced the first serial Oreshnik missile system, the first serial missile, and it has been delivered to the troops. Now serial production has begun. First, second, our specialists, Belarusian military specialists, and Russian, have chosen a place for future positions. And now work is underway to prepare these positions. So, most likely, we will close this issue by the end of the year. Well, we are in a hurry. We are doing it calmly. There is no such need to run ahead. Not only the positions will be ready. As you said, it is easy to build. It is necessary to have combat equipment, charges and missiles. It is not cheap, and this position needs to be protected. And it needs to be protected, of course. Everything is according to plan with us. Do not worry about safety.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, how do you assess the special operation now, and in general, its dynamics?
Yesterday, as usual, I discussed these issues several times with both the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff. And I knew that we would have an approach to the press. And I asked them myself. I tell them how to answer such a question about the situation in the Special Operations Zone. Their answer was, please, answer honestly. Now they will see this. They will remember it. And what is honest? It means that our troops are advancing along the entire line of combat contact, along the entire line, in the border zone, and in the Donetsk People's Republic, and in Lugansk, and in Zaporizhzhia, and in Kherson, everywhere, in all areas. Some are more, some are less. But positive activity. Of course, this is thanks to the courage and heroism of our guys. And, in particular, we are now in a special place, where a temple was founded in memory of all our soldiers, who died at all times for the fatherland. But now we are talking about a special operation. Today's positive dynamics at the front are connected, of course, with the heroism of our guys who are now moving forward. But we owe this to those of our soldiers who remained on the battlefield, who gave their lives for the motherland. Because it was they who created the conditions for today's people, who are in the ranks today, to move forward, to have such an opportunity. This is a common merit. In this sense, we have not had a single unnecessary loss. This is in general. And the dynamics are clear. Just recently, you heard that a new settlement was taken, Chasiv Yar. It is quite a large settlement. We have already heard that this is not true. I can tell you, and I can assure you, that this is completely true. And, moreover, in my opinion, the Ministry of Defense announced this only yesterday. In fact, Chasiv Yar was taken several days ago. Well, the soldiers were engaged in the so-called cleanup, although there are probably attempts at counterattacks. And, in addition, such statements that this is incorrect information on our part indicate that the highest political leadership of Ukraine is not very informed about the course of events. Well, that is their problem. But in general, I repeat once again, the dynamics are positive. After all, just recently, remember, everyone was talking. Our enemies and ill-wishers were talking about the need to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. And today they have another, one, but fiery passion to stop our offensive at all costs, either with promises of a good life, or with some threats, or with additional weapons, or with additional manning of the Ukrainian army. They want to stop everything, and then deal with these issues of additional manning and additional weapons. I will repeat once again, we need a long and lasting peace on good, basic foundations that would satisfy both Russia and Ukraine. That would ensure security for both countries. And, probably, those negotiators from the Ukrainian side are right, who so carefully, by the way, but still laid out the idea that we need to talk, perhaps, also about European security in general.
If from Minsk and Moscow we increasingly hear an ideology about peace, a determination to resolve all the difficulties, then from the West we hear only dictates and ultimatums. Even the European Union and the United States call the latest deal simply a disgrace for the EU. What can this dictate, ultimatums, trade wars, tariffs lead to for the world economy? And what can we expect from this?
Well, recently the Russian leadership correctly stated that such a continuation, although this has already happened, will lead to the deindustrialization of Europe. Although this has already happened in their country, and this process continues, they will destroy Europe, the European Union. Well, there is talk that the Americans also have such a goal, to weaken this center of power. After all, the European Union was not a weak organization. This is exactly what will happen. And they should not have been at odds with us head-on. I have also spoken about this more than once. But we need to be together. The European Union and Russia would be powerful if we united. Of course, the Americans will probably never be able to allow this. It is scary for them. It is scarier for them than China. If they united, it would be a huge force. But the EC does not understand this. But, probably, they do not need this. I look at these leaders. I do not want to characterize them under Vladimir Vladimirovich. Well, some of them are already leaving. As they are called, lame ducks. Others have recently arrived. Their rating is already below 20%. The people do not like this policy. And why do the peoples of Europe not like this? And the main reason is their position in relation to Ukraine. The Europeans themselves are becoming poor, and they are spending huge billions and trillions on weapons and aid to Ukraine. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's wrong. You know, until recently political scientists, and in the so-called political circles in general, said that the European Union is an economic giant, but a political dwarf. These are not my words. I don't want to offend anyone. We ourselves have read this in Western sources. But, and I have always said this before, In the modern world, it has always been important, and especially today, that sovereignty plays, one might say, a key role, including for economic development. It was clear that the European Union, Europe, does not have that much sovereignty. Today it has become obvious that they have no sovereignty at all. And this is immediately followed in the critical situation that has developed now by economic losses. And the loss of political sovereignty now leads to the loss of economic sovereignty as well, and to colossal losses. Therefore, and I have always said this, one of the key tasks, including the tasks of the special operation, is to strengthen Russia's sovereignty.
The topic of Ukraine is still raised in all issues one way or another. The recent scandals that have occurred in Ukraine related to anti-corruption agencies. What do you think this is all about? How can you comment on what happened?
Alexander Grigorievich, how can you comment on this? You know, I have thought about this a lot. Well, the West is now putting pressure on Zelensky. And I am watching this and thinking, well, what did Zelensky want? He took billions, hundreds of billions of money. The West says, well, we want to see where this money will go, where it is spent. And the Westerners once proposed creating an anti-corruption bureau and an anti-corruption prosecutor's office. This is precisely related to the issue of sovereignty. Zelensky took the money, and those who gave it to him, they say, we want to see how it is spent. The Ukrainians agreed, and the Westerners have now woken up. Well, probably, either elections or something else they want to organize for the people. The Ukrainians try to do this, but the West quickly organized itself and said no. And 2 days later, or a few hours later, the West said no. And 2 hours later, the Verkhovna Rada canceled everything. Zelensky signed the law on cancellation. What kind of sovereignty is this? No sovereignty. And there is no need to be indignant. You took the money, and the one who gave it to you wanted to control where you spent this money as a non-sovereign state. And where you spent it, you know, during this time. People on the Côte d'Azur have continued to build huge palaces and feel good. And some of them even want to be presidents of Ukraine. Therefore, this is a mess. You can't call it anything else. And the basis is precisely the loss of sovereignty and independence. In general, corruption is a negative phenomenon in society that is characteristic of many, if not all countries in the world. There is nothing unusual here. The question is the degree of corruption and the ability of society, the readiness and ability of society to fight this phenomenon. And what is the readiness and ability of society to fight corruption? That is, society itself must be ready, willing, and able to fight corruption. And if society influences such processes, this is part of democracy. But democracy cannot be brought in from outside. Just as it is impossible to fight such a phenomenon as corruption from outside, especially if it is done by those who themselves suffer from the same corruption. Well, isn't there corruption in Europe or the United States? There it is legalized in general. There is an institution of lobbying created there. What is it? It means that they go and hand out money to representatives of government at all levels. That's all. This is also corruption. And here it is clear that Ukraine is a country where corruption is truly overwhelming. Is it possible to fight it from outside? Alexander Grigorievich said that they created these various bureaus that are not subordinate to local authorities at all, neither to the president, nor to parliament, no one. This is an external institution. Listen, I just said, is it possible to bring democracy from outside, including institutions to combat corruption? When were these institutions created in Ukraine? In 2015. And what year is it today? 2025. In short, they didn't overcome it. Of course. Well, what happened? They have existed for 10 years. And everyone in the world is screaming at the top of their lungs. It's horrible. Corruption is overwhelming everyone in Ukraine. Yes, that is true. But the effectiveness of institutions brought in from outside is zero. We should not do this. Not impose some external institutions of governance on the people, in this case the Ukrainian people. But we should help people get on their own feet, create these institutions themselves. It is impossible for people to elect a president, a parliament, and not influence the processes that occur in society. This is a humiliating state, the complete absence of sovereignty. Yes, that's right. They tried to change something, to somehow return at least part of their sovereignty. But the master didn't like it. He whistled, clicked, and they immediately returned everything back. It would have been better if they had done nothing. It would have been better if they had sat, in one place, and everything would have been calm and smooth. They just disgraced themselves, that's all. But the idea itself, that it is necessary to somehow return at least part of the sovereignty, of course, it is correct. There is nothing to say here. Let's talk about the last question. Let's finish. Otherwise we will be here until the end with you, until the evening.
I would still like to clarify the negotiation process on Ukraine. It is difficult and slow. In this regard, Alexander Grigorievich has already partially said, but nevertheless, is Belarus ready to provide any assistance? And does Russia need it?
We have long agreed with Vladimir Vladimirovich. If necessary, he will always say, and he will involve Belarus in these processes. Today, as I just said, we agreed in Istanbul. Important issues, exchange of prisoners of war, wounded, and so on. I called Vladimir Vladimirovich and told him that we treat everyone equally. He supports this. People, both Ukrainians and Russians, they are warriors. Some are wounded. Some have something else. We will accept everyone who wants to go to the hospital immediately if we urgently need to provide assistance. And such people exist. It's not just about prisoners of war, but also about the transfer of the bodies of the dead. Ukrainians don't trust anyone with anything. Let the Belarusians, roughly speaking, carry the bodies of some there. Others here, only the Belarusians. The railway tracks were restored so that the refrigerators could be driven there. No. Only the Belarusians should sit at the helm of this locomotive and drag these refrigerators back and forth. We were looking for people for this. We had to involve Afghans who fought in Afghanistan. We found railway workers who did this. The Russians asked us. The Ukrainians agreed with this. We are doing it. If they need it, they will ask us again. But Vladimir Vladimirovich said it very correctly. Here my point of view completely coincides. About Chasiv Yar, we are absolutely informed. This is really true. I don't know. Maybe on the outskirts. Somewhere some houses are still not cleared. Today I don't know about this, but Chasiv Yar is the road to Kramatorsk. In fact, it is the center of a special operation in Ukraine. And then what? Why am I saying this? Today Ukraine should run and ask Vladimir Vladimirovich. Let's sit down at the negotiating table. Let's come to an agreement. Otherwise, in a month and a half, too, I don't know, there won't even be any defensive structures left there. The Russians will slowly gnaw away at all of this, seize it, and move on. They will conquer it. We will take it back. It is ours. Therefore, we must negotiate. If they want something, they should run to it. Because the day before, it is clear, we will discuss this topic. I collected all the information on the front line, and I also agreed on this with your military. We have this information absolutely coincides in all points, even in the Sumy region, where you are trying to create a buffer zone. There is an offensive everywhere, albeit not quickly, slowly. I asked Vladimir Vladimirovich, why slowly? He said, I am protecting people. That is right, slowly, but surely. And not so many people are dying. You know how it was in the Great Patriotic War. They abandoned hundreds of thousands of people, and hundreds of thousands died. In Poland alone, 600,000 of our Soviet people died. There is no such war in Ukraine. Everything is quiet and calm. But this gives the Ukrainians an opportunity to say, listen, let's sit down and come to an agreement. But they do not want this. As for Ukraine's participation in the negotiation process, we are very grateful to Alexander Grigorievich and Belarus in general for the support and assistance that Belarus and the President of Belarus provide us. We are in constant contact. I constantly inform Alexander Grigorievich about the results of this negotiation process, and all our exchanges take place on the territory of Belarus. The negotiation process began there in 2022. Then the negotiations moved to Istanbul, and we continue there. But we know the position of Alexander Grigorievich, the position of the entire Belarusian leadership and the Belarusian people, who strive for peace to come between our two countries, between Russia and Ukraine, as soon as possible. Alexander Grigorievich takes a direct and most active part in this. Thank you.